with University of Detroit Mercy lacrosse coach, head lacrosse coach, Chris Colin. We're going to get a chance to kind of catch up. Got a big game coming up with Ohio State. You just finished on a Thursday and kind of get away from the snowstorm. Played a great first half against Marquette and then kind of ran out of offensive gas. So kind of bring us up to date where we are and what you're happy with that game.
It's something that, we've been working really hard to play a little more consistent, a little tougher, right? So we won the ground balls, and we played pretty tough defensively throughout the game. And as you said, offensively, kind of in the third quarter, we have a situation that has kind of plagued us, as a MAC team. We can kind of go 10 minutes in the game and kind of not be all there, right? Where we're not all right, and we kind of what's the right word? Where we're kind of on our heels and not playing that well and survive it and still win. Playing Marquette, a top 20 team, Big East team, playing Ohio State, and anybody really in our new conference, that just can't happen. So that's something that we're working on. It's something we're trying to develop, but we talk about it all the time, but it's consistently happening, and we're trying our best to fix it.
Does it get exasperated somewhat, Chris, because you're young? Because
it's because we're young. It's young. We're kids from the Midwest, who kind of haven't seen this level, but we're learning. And at this point, we've had 3 opportunities. We've played a lot of different guys. I think we're going to continue to play a lot of different guys, and our lineup really isn't set yet. But we've got to get over and get a complete game, that'll turn into a win. Again, it's us. It's not, it's more of us than the opponent.
You go to High Point, you lose pretty handily. Then you get a chance for about, I think, 10 days or so between that and the Marquette game. The Marquette game's supposed to be played on Saturday. There's a snowstorm. You got to change it to Thursday. You come out halftime and you're up.
Yep.
And then they go on an 8-0 run. What are you thinking about at halftime? And is it the speed that they're not used to, or what is it that you?
No, it's just a general speed, toughness, everything, right? We talked about at the half. We knew that they were going to come out and punch us pretty hard. A Big East team, they've got film on the sideline. They know what we're doing. We know that they have film on the sideline. We need to continually adjust and play harder and harder as the game goes on, right? And we just didn't do that. So we got to get to that point. And it's experiential learning with a young group, but we just got to get there. And we weren't there for that second half, and especially at the beginning of the third quarter, we kind of let it get away, and that's been a hallmark of something we could get away with in the MAC, and now we can't. So we've got to learn and get better.
You're not a demonstrable, you're not real demonstrable on the sidelines. You're pretty calm most of the time. When you're I'm saying most of the time. You're not.
No, I actually wasn't this game. I was a little. I'm not. I don't complain much about the officiating. I think those officials are good people. They try really hard. They passed on we've had 2 games where I think they passed on the few on us. They didn't pass on them. You're just looking for that consistency. So, usually you get a little bit more work that's happening because, it leads for opportunities.
All right, so here's my question: as a head coach, you have to put your simmer when you got these kids that are inexperienced and you're running into the kind of mistakes. It's hard to explain to a layman about what learning to win is about. I don't think they really understand it. They've heard the statement, but they don't really see the connections in that process. So does it become a more patient Chris Colin, or does it become a more I'm not saying angry, but a little more expectation from you? Which is it for you and your team?
I think for this group and this young group, I think with an experienced group, you have patience because they've done it, right? We haven't learned how to do it yet. So right. I think being a little more strict, a little tougher, and communicating. And again, as a coach, it's all about communication, right? So you have to communicate more and more and more about the situation, what's happening, what they have to do about it, and what we can control in that situation.
Does throwing your schedule off from Saturday to Thursday, does that really play much into anything?
Gosh, it was a smart decision, right? With the commuting and Marquette would have had a rough commute and pretty much an unsafe commute. So we're happy about that, and I think it helped, everybody in the situation. So we're happy about the safety concerns and alleviating those. For us, with a big break, I don't think it really had much to do with Marquette. It might have had a little bit more to do with their first half performance, especially coming off a big win against Michigan. So again, I can only worry about us, and I don't think it had anything to do with us. I think we were ready to go, whether it was Thursday or Saturday.
A little bit of a break. Ohio State at the point is 3-2, but they travel this Saturday to Notre Dame. That puts a burden on them, and they pick you up on Tuesday. Does that help your schedule a little bit? Maybe being ready for them in Columbus.
For us, we're driving down the day of, which is a disadvantage. That's just the way it works with our situation. So that probably evens out a little bit. We're going into their beautiful, multi-million-dollar facility. I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's Ohio State's, I think, one of the classiest teams, and every coach or every team is well coached, but Ohio State, I know for a fact that whether it's a Saturday to a Tuesday, they're going to be just as prepared for us. Coach Myers does it right. So I don't think, I honestly don't think for them, a lot of teams it would matter. I think for them it doesn't.
Where's the ASUN as compared to the Big Ten?
Where's the ASUN? I think the top half of our ASUN is pretty good to the Big Ten. I think there's some guys that can compete where we are. I don't think we're at a Big Ten level yet. We sure strive to be there, but the Big Ten's, I think, one of the best conferences in the country, if not the best conference in the country. So, it's always great to play those opponents, and we've had a long history with Ohio State, and we're just very grateful every time we show up there and play.
At this point in the season at 0-3, you look down the schedule and think, okay, maybe this is where we can win. And I'm saying this in the back of your head. Or is it just literally, what do we do today, and then what do we do tomorrow?
Yeah, for me, it's always, what are we doing right now, right? And how are we getting better right now in the moment? We're not built, our out of conference to when it really comes down to it, doesn't matter. We want to get better and learn and be ready for the time we get into Mercer, which is our first conference game. So we have to learn how to travel. We have to learn how to play. We have to learn the right speed. So, great. We always want to win, and winning is a lot of fun. Losing is not. So, we want those good brain waves, good chemistry in our brain when we win. But ultimately, our conference is the most important thing for us.
And the last question, I don't want to sound like a loaded question, but offensively, do you have the talent to compete in the ASUN offensively at the moment?
I think that we have the talent. Are we there yet in terms of our fitness levels, our mental levels? I think our kids are as good as anybody in the Atlantic Sun. Okay. But are we able to put, six guys out there that are firing on all cylinders right now? Probably not, but we're going to figure out a way to get that done. what we do.
Because you can't rely on Bernie to score everything. You got to obviously have a balanced attack, I would think, at the level you're playing.
Yeah, 100%. You are 100% right, and we're going to figure that out. I would say pretty much on the field, there's probably only 2 or 3 positions set in stone, and the rest of them, it's how we got to find a consistent performer.
Well, listen, we hope you have a great, successful trip down to Columbus, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks so much.
We're with a young legend, if that's not an oxymoron, but certainly head coach at Jacksonville University, John Galloway. John, one of the finest goalies to probably come out in the last 10 years, and you've been now at Jacksonville for 6 years. So first of all, thanks for taking the time. It's pretty warm down where you are in Florida. So appreciate you taking a couple seconds, and welcome aboard. Talk briefly about the ASUN. You've gone from Southern Conference to now the ASUN. and sort of that transition? Do you look for different players? What's your thoughts on the league? And it's a unique league because the top of the ASUN is as good as anything there is in the country. And then you got some teams that are new and some teams that have come from different conferences. So talk a little bit about the conference.
Yeah, I really see it as not much different than the experience our guys have had in the Southern Conference. And the reason why is a lot of teams are the same. I mean, we used to have Air Force in the Southern Conference. We used to play Detroit in the MAC. Now, Mercer has always been an opponent of ours. Bellarmine's have been an opponent of ours. And because of the uniqueness of our schedule, a lot of the teams that are in the conference are teams that we would play against because of the travel challenges. Utah always needed somebody to travel to. So did we. So we always partnered up. So these are teams that we're pretty familiar with. So it's not going to change much in what we do. I think the rivalries are still going to exist. Air Force, Robert Morris, Utah, now Detroit, Cleveland State, Bellarmine, Mercer. I mean, those have always existed. And then now we have a home for new programs like a Lindenwood or a Queens. And I know the struggles that they have of scheduling and trying to find opponents and teams willing to travel to Missouri to go play. So I'm glad that we have a home for all of them. And it's going to be an incredibly competitive conference as years go on. It's going to be a lot of recruiting against one another because of where we're located. And anytime you have 10 teams in a conference, there's going to be a top and a bottom, perspective wise. But I think that you're going to see Queens and Lindenwood grow at a rapid pace because now they have a home and they have beautiful institutions and there's enough players to go around.
Welcome back. We're talking with longtime Titan broadcaster, John Losey. John has been the broadcaster for the UDM Titans for 5 years, and starting his 5th year. You're the voice. I'm joining you this year a little bit. We had a game last year, but we're going to be a full-time partnership this year. It's been a pleasure to be able to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to the season.
Yeah, no, this is great, Greg. Thank you so much. And, it's been great getting to know you, and I'm excited about this season because your experience and your knowledge of the game, coming into the booth with me, I think it's a match made in broadcasting heaven, if I have to say so.
We both live in small worlds, but I get that point from that standpoint.
Yeah, sure.
We have a game coming up. We were supposed to be on the air this past week with Marquette on a Saturday, but what the Storm did on Friday, they moved the game to Thursday, and it was unfortunately not broadcast. Now, I understand this year we're going from ESPN Plus to YouTube. Mm-hmm. Which I think will be an advantage because I think more people can find it than necessarily have a subscription. So I think that's a right. Good process.
Yeah.
I think it's just also important to think that I think we're going to approach this. If you listen to a lot of ESPN Plus games, there are sometimes good announcers and there's sometimes not so good announcers. And that's not a knock on the guys that don't do a good job. No. But I think we both offer something to the broadcast that'll be different, both your play-by-play and the slickness and what you bring to the table, and hopefully we can bring some insight from the color standpoint. So again, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's hit or miss. I mean, it's the world of streaming that everyone's involved with as it relates to sports now. And as much as we want the quality, even with the stream itself, I mean, that's a big driver. But the broadcasters and in terms of just being clear and concise and knowledgeable of the game, I think is it's extremely important for the people who want to follow the game and watch the game. And so I'm looking forward to having you in there and us getting started. I'm itching.
Well, our first opportunity to be the 25th with Utah visiting UD, coming into town from those lovely Rocky Mountains. Actually, the Wasatch. I think it's not the Rockies, but nevertheless, let me edit that. We have Utah coming in the 25th, which will be an interesting game. If you've ever had a chance to sit in the stands at Utah Stadium, it's a sight unparalleled. It's as good of facility viewing for a spectator, but they're coming to Detroit, so it'll be an interesting game. But let's kind of talk briefly. They head to this coming week. They're heading to Ohio State. Oof. That's a big task to play in Columbus, especially playing at that new facility. Mm-hmm. And John, you've watched a lot of film on this team so far, and obviously the scores indicated they played a really good first half against Marquette. They played a great second half against Mercer, but it's been a little bit in between over the last 3 games at 0-3.
Yeah, I was on the sidelines for the Marquette game. As you mentioned, it was something we were looking forward to broadcasting, but with the weather, Marquette came in early, and that's understandable. And I think that played a role in Marquette's performance in the first half. They were a little sluggish with that drive and getting in, but. In talking to Chris and talking to some of the coaching staff and some of the players, I mean, you look back at their third quarters, in the VMI game and the High Point game, and then again in the Marquette game. It's something coming out of that halftime break where, the bright lights come on and the kids just, for whatever reason, it's kind of a panic city situation. And you've got the other team making adjustments. And it was very clear in that Marquette game that, Marquette, from a technology standpoint, they've got the iPads on the sideline. And so they're reviewing things and they were very, very surgical coming out of that second half. And they essentially made the adjustments they needed to make, and they ripped off 10 straight, and that was it.
You wonder if coming off a big win over Michigan about the week previous didn't sort of put them in sort of a lull to some extent, realizing they were coming all the way across on that long bus trip. It's a 2-day early trip. There was a number of not excuses, but certainly situations in that premise. But part of UD's problem at the moment is you can't go 5 goals at the ASUN level and be able to compete. You got to still put the ball in the back of the net. And then when you've got, Mr. Burney and some of the kids, he's only got a couple of kids that have been consistent scorers. So you lock off a couple more guys and it makes it tough to score.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Marquette did. I mean, you look at Burney, he's the leading scorer this entire year, and you lock him off, and you lock off Majek. And so, there's the top 2 guys. You lock them off and somebody else has got to step up. And right now, that's coming few and far between. The other thing is I still think that there is a process that UDM is going through related to, being in the MAC and now coming into the ASUN. I mean, the talent level is just, no knock on anything, but I mean, the talent level is just far superior, and you can't have lulls in these games that you could get away with it in the MAC.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And we talked when prior to our talking here, we talked to Chris, and one of the conversations we had was the old story of learning to win isn't exactly just an urban legend. It's actually true. And the reality to it is, you get a freshman, they've just never seen speed like that.
Right.
They've never seen speed sustained like that. So it's not necessarily catching the ball, but it's catching the ball in the right place, being able to complete it, and that just takes some time. So he's young. They're playing a number of freshmen. So they're doing the recruiting, but it's going to be a little bit of while. So it's going to take some time for that to sort of play for.
Yeah, it's still transition. I mean, and you look at the really the roster too. You go up and down, and in previous years you'd have more of a diversified group of kids from different states, right? It wasn't all so heavily populated. We've got a lot of Michigan kids, which is great for Michigan, and a lot of great schools that they're coming from. But I think, if you look top to bottom, you're seeing a lot more local kids than I think we've seen in the past. We've always had local kids, but I think there's just a bigger influx of them now. And it could be COVID related. It could be any number of things, but I think that's a factor too.
Although to compete in the ASUN, you're almost going to have a national roster.
You have to. Yeah, we talked to Chris about that recruiting. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame.
We produce some fair amount of decent players here, but we don't produce them at that level. Because they're obviously, if they're at that level, they're being recruited by Big Ten schools and other ASUN schools. So it'll be interesting.
I mean, even you take a look at Michigan's roster. I mean, that was the whole goal there to kind of expand, and you look at that roster top to bottom, and now you're primarily coming from the East Coast, and so that's still a transition, for coach up there, and even then, there's still they lost to Marquette, right?
Well, on the schedule, we had a chance we had Ryan Dennehy on earlier in the show. The last couple of shows, we put Ryan on, talked to him, the coach at Mercer. We've had a couple of opportunities to talk to Andy Stimmel at Marquette. The top of the ASUN is tough, but on the schedule for UD is Mercer, certainly is Queens. There's a few of those schools in there that I think that UD can compete with quite well. So that'll be
Linwood,
a welcome. I think a welcome addition when we get to April, as it were.
Yeah, you look at the next one, Ohio State, and then they gotta make the long bus ride. I mean, you got a 14-hour bus ride down to Mercer. I mean, that no one wants to do that, but that's what you have to do. And then you got Utah coming. They got Robert Morris on top of that. And then they've got Queens and Linwood and Jacksonville and Air Force. So, it's there's not a lot of breaks in that schedule.
Jacksonville, the team that beat Duke.
Yep, exactly.
So
down in Jacksonville.
Joey Galloway. We talked to Joey today. I don't think he's surprised that they're doing well, and I don't think anybody in that league is surprised. And maybe the lacrosse world is a little bit surprised, but nobody knows anything about the inside part of baseball, so to speak. He's done a great job of recruiting at Jacksonville.
Yeah, and the transfer portal. I mean, I think what you're seeing right now in college lacrosse specifically is, you saw Rutgers make the Final Four kind of out of nowhere, right? And a lot of that had to do with the transfer portal. And now you see Jacksonville, and they've got a good influx of transfer portal kids. But on the flip side of that, you look at Georgetown. I was actually out for I was out in DC for the Georgetown Penn game. And, Georgetown is, very, very a team oriented last season, where they're very talented. And so a lot of influx of new kids this year. And you can see the difference where they're not gelling as a team. The talent's there, but because they're all coming from somewhere else, they really haven't developed. And so, you look at a couple of their losses, I think that's the noticeable thing.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with Ohio State coming up. If you don't get a chance to, if you really got to get down and see the stadium, because it is magnificent. And one of the things that was unusual, if you can imagine taking Michigan Stadium, which is certainly one of the best in the country, and elevate it 8 feet and put it on stilts, so that if you're getting concessions down below, you can still see the field level game.
Right.
I think it's a brilliant idea. It's fenced and all for the rest of it, but it makes it. I was down there a week ago, and it's just an unbelievable facility. I've
seen pictures.
It's Michigan and on steroids. It's really a great facility. So we'll be
and a great program, and they're playing really well. I mean, you never want to say never in any team sport, but this is a daunting task, for Coach Colin and the team. But it's all learning, right? I mean, you've got to go through adversity to get to the other side, and so I think that's one of his biggest things dealing with these players is. You got to stay positive, right? And it's not positive for positive's sake. It's, listen, we've got to go through this. We're in the middle of a storm, and there is another side, and you're going to get through it. And they got to have the patience to get through it.
Well, hopefully we get a chance to see some improvement at Ohio State, and then the next time that we get together will be next week to talk a little bit about the Utah game. And the next time anybody wants to take a look at us, they'll get a chance to see us on the 25th at, I believe, noon. Not I'm mistaken.
I think it's a 1:00 start.
1:00 game.
I got it right here, my friend.
At UDM.
Yep, 1:00, Titan Field. Yeah, so we got 2 straight home games. So they hit Ohio State, then they're at Mercer Saturday the 18th, home against Utah, and then home against Robert Morris. Both 1:00 starts at Titan Field.
Well, John, I look forward to working with you, and I think it'll be a fun spring.
It is going to be a blast, Greg, and I'm looking forward to it more than you can believe. So it's going to be great.